house, man.
That's
Man.
amazing. Right. I think there has to be another side to it as well, where we say the momentum. And I don't know how to do this because there's so much anger about the subject, but we've got to be pushing more people to vote. There's so many folks who are convinced that the government doesn't work for you. My vote doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is, in situations like this, who the district attorney is, who that person is matters. Who the judges are matter. So who is in your local government matters. That's going to play a huge part in whether or not they're going to take these cases seriously. If you don't vote, then you're not going to have an opportunity to place people in power who care about your perspective and want to ensure that these people are punished. And I feel like all too often, folks have the choice between punishing these cops and siding with a bunch of people who don't vote, in turn, pissing off a bunch of the people who do vote. And anytime you put a politician in that type of situation, they're going to side with the people that they know are going to show up to the polls. If you care about these cops being prosecuted and you care about how your local government is handling these cases, you have to vote. Even if you don't like Biden and Kamala, even if you don't like the top of the ticket, you've got to vote down ballot to put those people in power who actually care about your positions and are going to fight for you when things like this come up. Jason,
Well,
I want to say something.
I
I saw you shaking your head, frowning your face.
I just look at it like I look at everything else. Like, y'all know who my opinion on that is you want to vote somebody in that you feel is a good person, but you're voting them into a system and that's eventually going to corrupt them or is going to defeat them. Now I understand, like, we vote, like we let's just say we vote Democrat straight down the board. Everybody in that motherfucker is a Democrat. We got Democrats in. I mean, shit, we got Democrats running shit now.
Right.
And I mean, what's happening? All they doing is talking good shit.
But this is the problem. What you just stated is a problem. Too many people are voting based upon party instead of based upon individual. I'm not saying vote Democrat. I said vote upon your own perspective. Vote based on who you are, and then look at the field of candidates and try to find the people who are aligned with your perspective. And if you don't see that person aligned with your perspective, then you need to consider running yourself. But something
I would
has
never
to be
wish
done.
that on somebody.
You can't just. I understand. I understand. But at the end of the day, some of these folks are going to have to step up before anything is going to change. You can't just continually say, well, the system is corrupt. The system is never going to work for you. If you just sit around and say that, but nothing will change.
That's my problem with it, though. I only get to vote. So once I vote, and let's just say, for instance, I'm voting for this person who's like-minded and who's telling me that he's going to go in, they're going to do, or she's going to go in and do what they said they're going to do. Awesome. We got them in. Here we go. And then they get in there and they start doing other shit. I can't do anything until the next election.
That's not true. That's not true.
Why isn't it?
Because the whole point of politics is pressure. Like that's everything that's happening right now revolves around pressure. And this, what you just mentioned right there, is one of the major issues. Like people feel like their only responsibility is to vote. I just have to vote for 4 years and then things will just magically change. No, you vote, and then there's pressure on the candidates that you've chosen and the politicians overall to do the things that you need them to do. This is what these corporations are doing. They don't just give a person money during their election and then just feel like everything will go okay. No, they have lobbyists. They have people in government to ensure their perspectives are constantly being stated and clear. I go to the alderman meetings in my neighborhood. It's all old folks, and a lot of those seats are empty. Like, you have to be willing to be a part of the process the entire way through. It can't be, well, I voted, but he didn't do what I wanted to. So now I'm waiting until the election and it's everybody else's fault but my own. Like, no, you have to be directly part of the process of making it clear this is where the community stands. And if you're not going to do this, you're in direct opposition of the community and you will not be able to hold your position of power.
But okay, so it still breaks down to, okay, you're not doing this pressure that you're talking about. I'll ask the definition of that in a second. And when I'm trying to understand about this is because I don't vote. I don't do this. I don't. Okay. And I haven't had anybody convince me otherwise why I should.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to understand what you mean by pressure when you say, okay, he gets in, I go to all these meetings, I go to these round tables or whatever, and I tell people, hey, this is what we need, this is what you need to be doing, this is what you should be doing. Mm-hmm. And they still don't fucking do it. So then what?
No, see, here's what happens. They still don't do it. First of all, no matter what, like all 4 years, a politician is not going to do everything that you want them to do, right?
Of course.
What you have to be able to demonstrate is that you come from a community that is organized. It's like when you mentioned during our last podcast episode, you said if the cops attempted to do stop and frisk in your neighborhood, white people will go crazy, right? Well, what do you mean when they go crazy? They're going to be organized, come to the politicians that run their neighborhoods and say, look at what these cops are doing. This is unacceptable. We're not going to tolerate this. And you better do something about this real quick, or you ain't going to be in office when the next elections come around. Now, maybe those politicians ignore those white folks and say, stop and frisk is good. We like it. Our donors like it. We're going to keep it around. That means they won't be in power, though, when those next round of elections come around. And the next round of people that come, they're going to realize when those white people ask for something, they mean it. And if you don't do what they say, you're not going to be able to remain in power. So even though it failed that last time, this time you've proven we are organized. We are a voice you cannot ignore. And so therefore you become someone that they have to take into account, and your voice matters. Right now, we're not organized. We're not united in what we're asking of our political representatives. We don't vote. And consequently, when we stand up and say, we have an issue with this, police brutality is a problem, what's happening in our communities is a problem, we are ignored. The only reason they're paying attention to us now is because the first time in this country's history, Black folks are burning white people's shit, not our own shit. That's the difference. They're going downtown. They're going to rich people's areas, looting their stores, burning their cars, creating problems. So it's becoming something that the rich and powerful cannot ignore. But beforehand, we were burning our own stuff, tearing down our own businesses, not voting, not organized.
And there was nothing they had to worry about at that point. So, yeah.
Exactly. Right. The only way we're going to be able to put in political representatives that actually abide by our perspective and fight for our communities is to vote and then put organized pressure on those people. And yeah, we're going to have to weed out some folks that will pretend to be on our side and then do nothing that we ask. That's okay. This is a lifelong process that has to continue with our children. It's not about, well, we fought for this guy and we voted and it didn't work out. So now, oh, well, I guess we just got to go back to the drawing board, or what's the point of voting? This is why you get taken advantage of. This is why we get taken advantage of.
So if I can understand it, just kind of looking at it from what you're saying in regards to when it comes to the pressure that you put on a politician, more along the lines you're threatening their capability of forward movement with this political position that they're in. So it's their only benefit in order to acknowledge the community and what they're saying, in order so they can keep those votes just in case they decide they want to go and do something else. I need them votes too.
All politicians want to remain in power. It is a balance between how can I do as much as I can for my donors and the people that give me money, while at the same time remaining in power and getting enough people to be willing to vote for me. And the problem we have right now in Chicago is siding with Black people and the impoverished oftentimes does not allow you to stay in office because the people that you are helping do not vote. The best way to remain in power, at least before Lightfoot got in there, was to do what the mayor tells you. Because the mayor then, when you're up for reelection, will give you $25,000, $30,000 towards your alderman campaign. You'll be guaranteed a certain amount of people who are going to run those flyers for you, do that work for you. And then there's a certain block of people who are just going to do what the machine tells them to. And so it guarantees you reelection. Whereas if you went against Rahm Emanuel, if you went against the Dalys, if you said, no, I'm going to stand with the people that you all are trying to destroy, sure, you might be on the right side of history technically, but at the end of the day, you're going to be a one-term alderman because these people don't vote. They don't vote and they don't pay attention. So they don't even know that you're fighting for them. All they do is sit up at barbershops and say, well, it's all the same. Nobody's fighting for us. There's no point. Things will always be horrible. And then they bitch and moan when someone gets shot or when something's happened in this community. We need to get on the same page about what it means to really fight. And part of fighting means that you need to maintain control over what's happening in the areas where you live. And you can't claim to have control of your communities when you have no control whatsoever over the people that are representing you. You have to decide that that's important if you want real change. That's a requirement. Otherwise, you end up in a situation where a kid gets shot in the back 15 times and the mayor holds the video for 3 months and nobody does anything about it. Nothing happens. It was all outside pressure forcing the Rahm Emanuel to release that video. It was outside organizations saying, you have to show the public what is happening. When the fact of the matter is, we should have had a mayor that was saying this video needs to be released. But because we don't vote as a block, and too many of us don't vote, period, we don't have enough power to do that. The fact of the matter is, Rahm's people came out and said he could have won re-election. They said if he decided to run again, even after closing 50 of our schools in the most racist, insensitive way possible, even after holding that video for 3 months and showing us complete disrespect, they felt like he could still win, but that it would be an absolute dogfight and that he wasn't interested in doing the dogfight. But at the end of the day, because we don't vote, because there's not enough people that actually care about us for us to be mobilized, he felt like at the end of the day, I can mobilize enough of the rich, enough of the wealthy, enough of the white Puritans to put me right back into office. Because these people that I'm screwing over, they're not organized and they don't care enough in order to ensure that I'm not in power. That is about the vote. That is about the vote. And too many people don't seem to understand that. And I'm not talking about the top of the ticket. You can say all sorts of things about how much power does the president have? What does the president really change? Blah, 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 blah. I'm not talking about the top. I'm talking about local government. Your local government has a huge amount of control and power on how you are treated. You must be part of that system. You have to care. Else you're going to just keep getting the same thing.
I'll say 3 points on it if I remember them as I talk. You know, 1 point is, hey, you gotta, if 90% of my ward turns out for the vote, but in this last election, neither Lightfoot nor Periwinkle, neither one of them, they didn't have any discussions in my ward, right? They didn't come to my ward specifically, right?
Yeah.
Now, if we got 90% turnout in this ward, guess what? They're gonna be in this ward. And they're gonna be asking questions in this ward's of the residents in this ward, because hey, 90% turnout in this ward, that can help swing an election. So
Right.
they're gonna for sure want to talk to the people in this ward, and they're gonna have a discussion. They're gonna come specifically to this ward if we got 90% turnout. The second thing is, even though no candidate might inspire you, right? I'm willing to bet that if you had to make a choice, you could choose one. Which means that if you had to make a choice and you chose one and you would say that would be my choice if I absolutely had to vote or I'm going to jail, that means when you don't vote, you're actually voting for the other person. So if you could force yourself to choose someone, then when you don't vote, that person you were forced to choose, you've just chosen the other person. You've just helped the other person win. So whichever you think is the more evil of the two, you just helped that person get another vote. Is basically what you just done. Now here's the third part of it, and this is when we take it up. Now, this is something that a lot of liberals ain't gonna want to hear, right? But when you take it up to that top part of the ticket, right? Even though you might know you're gonna vote Democrat every time, who knows? But we got to start being flexible on that, or at least we got to make it look like we are. Because here's the thing: in a presidential election, Illinois don't matter. Illinois don't matter because Republicans, they don't think they're going to get Illinois, and Democrats think they are going to get Illinois. So there's no reason to listen to Illinois. The only concentration for the election, and Trump did this beautifully. He did this perfectly, is to concentrate on the swing states. He acted like, I could say Trump did not want to come here and speak. That was all a ruse. He did not want to come here and speak, and we did not prevent him from coming here and speak. It looked like we did, but honestly, he didn't care to come here and speak. He didn't care. So it looked like we got a victory. We prevented Trump from coming here and speaking. We did this or that. Trump didn't think he was going to get Illinois. So he didn't have plans on wasting his time. I can guarantee he probably didn't even write a speech. So those are the three things. Those are 3 points I would make with regards to voting. And because I used to be a not vote guy. And then when I sat and thought about those three things, it was like, as much as it's annoying to get up and go out and do that doggone thing and stand in line possibly, and do all that, it's funny the small things that inconvenience you. Like I'll stay in that Wendy's line forever and wait for my spicy chicken sandwich, but I won't. For a long time, I wouldn't stand there and vote. So it's amazing the things that trigger you. But I realize now, I just gotta, especially with the state of things, I gotta get out there and try to convince others to get out there too.
I've admit, like I've had my moments where I've wanted to. I just never. You know what? I'm not even gonna sit here and lie like I've ever done any research into people or anything like that. I assume the majority of most politicians fucking suck. That's how true. I feel about politics.
You're correct
like
about
politics
that.
And whatnot is just like, politics I feel like is one of them things and whatnot that just really doesn't work. I mean, I'm assuming it works for some people because there's a lot of motherfuckers who's happy and the rest of us apparently can eat shit according to them and whatnot. So, I never felt like my vote would really mean anything. And I voted like, when I turned 18, I registered and I voted. I went and I punched all them tickets. And I remember when I went in and I voted, like obviously at the top, that's when you used to punch them holes. I don't know if they still do that or not. That's about how long ago I voted. But I remember like the first choice was who the president was going to be. And I think when I turned 18, that was 98.
A long ass time ago.
Shut up. So I was trying to think about like who like at that point that would have either been Bush. No, it wouldn't have been Bush Jr. Who was before Bush Jr.? That was
Clinton.
Who was before Jr.?
Clinton.
Who was before W?
Bill Clinton.
Clinton. So maybe because Clinton did 2 terms, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I voted. The first time I voted, I think, was for his second term. And then after I finished up, pushing the hole for him, I just went down the line and like, you literally vote for everybody in all these different wards, all these different districts, all these judges. And my thought was, who the fuck goes and does research about every fucking judge that's running or every fucking alderman? It only seems like I would want to focus on the ones that are in my area. But at the same time, you could be fucking somebody in a whole nother ward.
Yep.
So,
And
when
matters.
you go down the line, you start thinking, okay, well,
matters.
Democrat.
That's what they count on. That's why. So what they do now, when you look at the
so when I saw that part about it, I will admit and shit, the lazy in me fucking jumped in. Like, I'm not about to do the research on all these fucking people. Shit.
So what they do now is when you look at the slides, they link the slides with a particular candidate. So when you're voting down the line, even if all of them are Democratic, they'll say like, surrogate of Bernie Sanders or surrogate of Hillary Clinton, so that you get an idea of who this person is aligned with when you're voting, down the block. So I'd say two things. One,
Okay.
I agree with you 100%. Most politicians suck, which is all the more reason why you have to pay attention to what's going on to understand whether or not a person is fighting for you. You have to understand the issues, because all politicians will stand at the podium and say, I defend poor people. I stand for the middle class. I want you to have everything you want out of life. I'm trying to give you great health care. All the while, most of these people are purposefully trying to destroy your lives for their own gain. So you have to understand the issues that are impacting your community, and then understand what those politicians are doing in regards to those issues, right? Like, for a perfect example, later on in this discussion, we're going to talk about Southwest investment. Lightfoot presents that as a great thing for the community. We're going to help all these South and West Side neighborhoods, and we're going to build them up, and we're going to strengthen all these Black people, and it's going to be great for all of them. But because we read it and look at it, and we know the history of Chicago, when we see that, that sounds like a bunch of gentrification. But if you don't understand what's going on, if you're not paying attention, then it's easy for a politician to delude you into believing that they're fighting for you. And the second thing I'll say goes back to what Hudson talked about as far as how many people in a particular area are voting and whether or not politicians will be willing to then come to that area and talk to them. I think getting more people to vote has to be a two-way street. So on the one hand, there needs to be more people in the community understanding that things are never really going to change. We're never going to be able to take control of our communities until we control the people who represent them. So there's that, right? But then you also have these Black people presenting themselves as potential political leaders and folks that we should trust. They need to also be willing to go to these areas where typically folks do not vote. And all too often, I feel like they focus on, well, there's these pockets of the community. I know these people vote, so I'm going to go to them and try to get them to side with me, as opposed to going to the vast majority of Black people. Not vast majority. I say it's like half and half, like the other half of the Black folks who do not vote, and say, and try to make the case for them about why do they vote. I've mentioned on the show before, one of my best friends, his strongest memories as a child is Harold Washington coming to the projects and talking with everybody who was there. And he talked about how being a kid and being able to walk up to a person who was running for mayor and actually touch that person, how inspiring that was from him. He's on the project. These people ain't voting. The majority of these people are not coming to the polls, but Harold Washington is like, if I want these people to start coming to the polls, I better show up. And when I show up, I got to make it clear, I'm not scared of my own people. We need representatives who are willing to step into these areas and say, I'm not scared of my own people. And I got to make the case with you all. You have to vote. Nothing is going to change until you vote.
Well, a good question to me always is, what a little over 100 million people voted in the last presidential election for the president, you know, and we got what 380 million people in the U.S. I mean, of course, you take out the kids, but you're still talking about like 200 million people who are, who are sitting on the sidelines during what was the most major presidential vote that this country and I think even still that was a high turnout for what usually happens, I think, in an election. And it's always it seems like when Democrats want to win, and maybe it seems like that's when they really go out and try to win the hearts and the minds of those people who don't vote, is when they really want to win. When Obama was running, they really wanted to win. And his speeches just would inspire people to come out who I think haven't voted in a long time or had lost faith in the system. After Reagan and Bush, now here comes Bill Clinton. I think they really inspired people to want to come out. They didn't want another 4 years of Bush after 12 years of the Reagan-Bush fiasco. They're like, look, I need to get up out and vote. We had crackheads like, look, we gotta shuffle ourselves down there and vote too. And I think we lack that group like you talking about, who will consistently go out and really who's targeting whoever could target those 200 million non-voters could win every election for the next, but we're stuck in a two-party system who it's in their best interest to not have these other 200 million people voting. Democrats aren't to me fighting that hard to make it easier to vote. They pander a little bit, but they're not really fighting. It's I don't know, man. I just wish the only way I see out is if we can get, like right now, if we circle back around to Kenosha and all this, the center line is way too far to the right. And especially when we talk about equality, our starting point is way too far to the right when it needs to be center. It's way too far over here, and that's where we're always starting. And so that's what keeps us locked into this situation where I'm in support of moderates, but there are certain issues where no, I'm not in support of a moderate issue because it's not supposed to be a political issue. Equality shouldn't be a political issue. So to me, there shouldn't have to be a moderate, a right, and a left on equality. It should just be equality and that's it. But it is a political issue. So somehow we got to win those hearts and minds and pull that needle to center where it's so far right now. And we got so many people sitting on the sidelines, as many people that are protesting, as many people that are anti-protester. There is still much more people than those folk combined that is just sitting there waiting to see who's going to win. And that's what's hurting this right now. And that's what's pissing me off more than anything about this whole thing, is how can you sit on the sidelines when all of this is happening? I don't get it.
It's crazy.
Well, let me be the first to say and let these folks know. And this is the reason why I hang out with these two cats, because they know a hell of a lot more than me. And they study stuff and they pay attention to the world. So for the first time in a long time, I have actually considered going out and voting again. But I need to do my own little bit of research, and I need to look into people and see who actually deserves to have that vote. Because that's one of my biggest things. Like, I don't believe anybody deserves to have it. I really don't. But at the same time, and the way you put that too, and saying that, nobody deserves my vote, technically I'm giving some asshole my vote. So at the end of the day of not doing something.
Honestly,
I don't like that shit.
There are two additional segments that I feel like we should do as a channel regarding voting leading up to the election. One, I completely agree with you, Jason, that when you look at the ballot, there are a bunch of judges and smaller positions within Chicago that people are being asked to vote for when they don't know anything about these people. I believe it would really service our listeners, especially since a lot of them live in Illinois, if we did a segment breaking down some of these different people, talking about where they stand on the issues, and not trying to say this is who you should or shouldn't vote for, but just really just presenting the information and saying, hey,
This is
here
what this
are
dude is
the
about. This is
people.
what this dude is about.
Exactly. And then based upon wherever you fall, you can vote accordingly. But also, I think we should do an episode, since a lot of people, they say, I have no intention of voting because I don't care about the top, or I have a real issue with the top. I don't like Biden. I don't like Kamala, or I don't like Trump, but I don't feel like anything is going to happen, so I shouldn't bother voting. I think we should have a segment about what do we feel like is a real drawback of potentially not voting, and then that Biden and Kamala not winning. Like, people keep saying, well, Black people's lives would be so much worse, and Trump being in office for 4 years would be so much more horrible. I think we should do a segment and analyze whether or not that's true, because I think there is a case to be made that maybe this ticket has done a lot more harm to Black people than Trump actually has. But at the same time, maybe Trump could do a lot more harm over the next 4 years than Biden and Kamala Harris would do. So I think that's something we need to discuss to help more people be informed about why you should or should not vote at the top of the ticket. But regardless, there's no excuse for not voting down ballot. There's just not. These people have too much control over your lives. And going back to what you said, Hudson, there are way too many issues that have become political when they shouldn't be.